It's a hot August morning here on the homestead. I only get about an hour of work in before it gets too hot, so let's see what I can get done. We have some old brassicas still in the landscape fabric here that we need to get rid of. And the cabbages are so decayed that I can kind of just move them around with a rake. But then there's also a lot of weeds growing up through the holes that we had the brassicas growing through. So you can see here I'm just kind of pulling everything out. I'm just going to leave it out on the plastic to compost, get a bit lighter before I move it to the compost pile. With the hot August summer we get here in North Carolina, our tomato production slows way down. But with that also comes an increased production of okra, and we also get more cucumbers now as well. So you can see here I'm doing my daily harvesting tasks. I have a special route that I do where I do okra, then I go back for peppers, and I go around to our other garden and get the cucumbers. Even though our plants are young for the okra, we're getting enough for about a meal a day. Also plenty of peppers. We only got a couple squash from the garden before the vine borers went in and killed all of our plants. Here's one of the pumpkins we got. It's actually growing in our cucumber patch, and we're getting plenty of cucumbers. And we did get one or two melons before the deer found them and started to eat them. So we were able to enjoy a couple of those this summer. So some of you mentioned we should use some of our excess tomatoes to make a sauce. I don't have any experience making sauce in the past, so I basically decided to just do a quick sauce, not taking the skins off, not taking the seeds out. I'm not even being that strict about which tomatoes are going in. It's basically just the oldest ones we had on hand. Even though they're fresh, we just needed to get them out of the fridge. So you can see here I'm using the food processor, breaking them down, throwing it in a pot, and I'm just going to let it boil. So after a while it reduced into sort of a paste, which you can see here. This was about 4 meals worth. I put 2 meals worth in each of these little Snap-Lock containers that I have on hand. Just because I didn't want to make so much. This isn't a canned product. It's not meant to be preserved. I just wanted to do this as an experiment, just to use up some tomatoes. And this was about 4 lunches mixed with rice. I like to do a fried rice and sauce. It's really good. Hey everyone, I'm here in my kitchen. I'm going to try to make some pickles with all the excess produce that we have. So similar to the tomatoes, we had some excessive cucumber plants. Typically what happens to us around here, I guess since we're new at gardening, is we'll have one crop that does really well, and that's kind of all we have. We get kind of sick of eating cucumbers with every meal, so then we have bags and bags of these in the fridge. We do grow slicers and picklers, but I basically just used whatever was ready. In this case I used the bigger of the cucumbers because we wanted to keep all the smaller cucumbers saved separately for a different experiment for pickles, where we pickled the entire cucumber instead of slices. You can see here I'm using the crinkle cutter, which I typically use for cheese, to slice up these cucumbers. And we have this pretty cool container. This is actually a really old container that I used to use when I was a kid just to eat refrigerated pickles straight from the fridge for a snack. This is the first time I'm going to use it to actually pickle my own pickles. And this isn't really a true pickled product. Basically what I'm doing here is mixing some cucumber slices, some crushed red pepper like you would have for pizza, and also some kind of squashed garlic. I'm not really mincing this or anything, just throwing it in for the flavor. And then I'm mixing a ratio of water and vinegar into there. It's basically going to make like a salad dressing, Italian dressing flavor. So if you like Italian dressing on your cucumbers, you'd probably like this. So here I'm doing a 50-50 ratio of water and apple cider vinegar. They say you can use all sorts of different vinegars. I happen to like apple cider vinegar the best. I hooked up the gas lines to our century-old farmhouse a couple years ago, and we're getting really good use out of our gas range. It really brings stuff to a boil really fast, so that's what I'd recommend if you do a lot of cooking. So I poured in the brine, and it has to sit for a week in the fridge to kind of infuse all the flavor into the cucumbers. It's been a few weeks since I recorded this video, so I've had a chance to eat almost half of these cucumber slices. I typically put them on sandwiches or just eat them as a snack, and as I suspected, it does taste a lot like Italian dressing with cucumbers. Hi everyone, I'm up before the sun this morning because I have to fix our tomato patch. As you can see here, we have a bunch of tomatoes that kind of fell over. We made the mistake of using biodegradable strings, and I guess through the summer heat and the storms and the weight of the tomatoes, they're all falling over. So I need to find some other string to use and switch some of these out. So if you're interested in how we trellised these tomato plants, you can go back and watch one of our earlier videos from this year. But basically I just tie a little loop to hook the string over the bamboo that we have on the top, let it hang down, and then we use these little plastic tomato clips where they clip around the plant loosely, but the hinge area actually clamps onto the string and holds it in place. And as the tomatoes grow, we clip it up and up and up, higher and higher onto the string, and we have some tomatoes, like you can see here, that actually go beyond the top of our bamboo. I'm not sure how we're going to harvest those once the tomatoes start fruiting up that high, but that's a problem for the future. Anyway, I used much thicker string here than we had before, and it seems more durable. It's not going to be biodegradable. Thankfully, I only have to replace a few strings that broke, basically just the biggest plants that had the most mass on them, where the storms were able to pull it down, breaking the string. A bit of the pain was taking the tomato clips off of the old string and putting it onto the new string while having to deal with the weight of the plant. Here's a couple tomato plants at the other end of our tomato patch, and since they were so close to each other, I decided just to bring one string down, clip both plants to it. I don't even know if these plants are going to come back. The bottom leaves are all dying off, and since they fell over, I think some animals ate the top leaves off. And if there's no leaves, I don't think the plant's going to grow. So anyway, both of these plants might not make it. If one does, great. It'll go up the string. Otherwise, we'll just have to wait until the heat goes away to see if the tomatoes come back. And speaking of those dead leaves, you can see here the entire bottom half of our tomato patch is essentially dead. We do have a lot of green tomatoes still, but with this heat that we're having up in the 90s every day, I think it's really preventing the tomatoes from ripening or maybe growing from the smaller sizes up to the bigger sizes. I'm not an expert in tomatoes. This is my first time actually growing tomatoes outside rather than in the greenhouse. So I'm just going through, getting rid of all this stuff, throw it in the compost. If it doesn't help the plant, at least it kind of makes it more aesthetically pleasing. The leaves also kind of get in the way when I'm looking for tomatoes on lower plants. Another hot morning here on the homestead. Just wanted to show you guys something pretty cool that I found in the compost pile. Check it out. Look at all these volunteer tomatoes we have grown out of here. We've had our compost pile in a couple different spots, and every time we find all sorts of new produce growing in there. And since our tomato crops have actually slowed down, this is our main source of tomatoes right now. We haven't been able to do too much in this heat, but if you like and subscribe, we'll make sure to make more content as the weather cools.